Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we explore profound wisdom and surprising insights that really cut through the noise.
Yeah, hopefully get past just the surface level information overload.
Exactly. Last time, we were immersed in the Valley Spirit, that sort of gentle, inexhaustible power of the Tao.
That was a great discussion.
Today, though, we're tackling something that, well, at first glance feels completely upside down. It's a fascinating paradox from Laozi's Chapter 7.
Right, the one about leading by stepping back, possessing by letting go.
That's the one. It's incredibly counterintuitive, isn't it?
Totally. But, as we'll dig into, it holds some surprisingly powerful truths about success, survival, even how we think about ourselves.
And for this deep dive, you, our listener, have shared some really incredible source material with us. It's this, rich tapestry.
Absolutely. We've got classic sinological analyses, ancient commentaries, and some remarkably modern takes on Laozi's wisdom. It's quite a spread.
So our mission today, basically, is to distill the core message of this chapter. Chapter 7.
Yeah, unpack its literal meaning line by line, and then really explore its, well, startling relevance today in this complex, often hyper-competitive world.
We want to reveal how this ancient philosophy, penned millennia ago, can illuminate modern life in ways you might just not expect.
Exactly, a kind of shortcut to being truly well-informed about this enduring piece of wisdom.
Okay, let's get into it, this paradoxical wisdom. We begin, as always, with the text itself. Here's Chapter 7, translated by the renowned sinologist D.C. Lao. His work is pretty foundational here.
Definitely a go-to translation.
Heaven is eternal and earth is lasting. The reason why heaven and earth can be eternal and lasting is that they do not live for themselves. Hence, they are able to be eternal and lasting.
Okay, makes sense so far. Nature endures because it's not, selfish.
Therefore, the sage puts his person last and it comes first, treats it as extraneous to himself, and it is preserved.
Here comes the twist.
Is it not because he is without thought of self that he's able to accomplish his private ends?
Wow. That last line, that rhetorical question. It's really the pivot for the whole chapter, isn't it?
It really is. But let's break it down from the start. Heaven and earth as models.
Right. Laozi kicks off saying their enduring nature, the eternal sky, the lasting earth, comes precisely because they don't live for themselves. They don't have self-interest. Exactly. They simply are. They don't strive to survive. They don't hoard resources. They don't calculate their own preservation. They just operate naturally.
No agenda.
No agenda. And it's because of this effortless, unselfish flow that they last. Like the scholar Yukiyu notes, they literally don't calculate their existence.
They don't sit around planning how to be eternal.
They act without selfish motives, simply
Right.
being, and in that state, they actually sustain everything else. That natural, unforced existence for the benefit of all is the foundation of their longevity.
Okay, so heaven and earth provide this cosmic blueprint for lasting, for stability. And the sage, the wise person, is meant to mirror this in their own life. That's quite a leap.
It is a leap from the cosmic to the personal. But that's the core idea. Laozi says the sage puts their person last, and paradoxically, it comes first.
And then the next bit treats their self, their own safety, their ambitions, as if it doesn't matter. Extraneous.
Yeah, like it's outside of them, not the main focus.
And then it is preserved. This just flies in the face of everything we're told today, doesn't it?
Completely. I mean, think about it. Self-help, social media, business advice, it's all put yourself first, optimize for personal gain, protect your interests.
Look out for number one.
Exactly. And Laozi seems to be saying, maybe that's not the whole story or even the best strategy.
Which brings us back to that killer last line, the rhetorical question.
Is it not because he is without thought of self that he is able to accomplish his private ends? It's more than a question, it's a challenge, a profound challenge to our basic assumptions.
It suggests that maybe true selflessness, like a genuine lack of ego-driven ambition,
Of that constant self-centered striving?
might actually be the most effective path, the most natural way to achieve your deepest, truest goals.
It really flips the script on self-interest being the main driver, doesn't it? Now, it's crucial when Laozi talks about eternal and lasting. We need to be careful.
He doesn't mean living forever physically.
No, not biological immortality. As Professor Fu Pirong points out, this lasting is relative. Only the Tao itself is truly absolute eternal.
Okay.
The long life, Laozi mentions, is more about transcending the ego, achieving a kind of enduring influence or spiritual continuity that goes beyond just the physical body.
Like a legacy. An impact that lasts because it wasn't selfishly chased.
Exactly. It's a deeper kind of preservation.
Which really hammers home this idea of dialectical thinking. This chapter feels like a masterclass in it.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening who's maybe not familiar with the term, it's not about picking sides, right? Or just finding some bland middle ground.
No, it's more subtle. It's about understanding truth through how opposites interact.
Right, like how putting yourself last leads to coming first, or letting go leads to possessing. These opposing forces clash, and something new, a deeper truth, emerges.
It's like a conversation between contradictory ideas, and the resolution is richer than either starting point. A really powerful way to tackle these complex philosophies.
And you see this dialectic perfectly in Why Heaven and Earth Endure. Remember the ancient commentator Wang Bi? A really key figure.
What did he say?
He observed, insightfully, to live for oneself is to compete. Not to live for oneself draws others to you. Think about that.
Competing versus attracting.
Exactly. A system based purely on self-interest, everyone out for themselves, inevitably creates competition, conflict, scarcity, friction.
Like you said, departments in a company only hitting their own targets, ignoring the bigger picture, causes chaos.
Total chaos. But a selfless system, one that just is and supports everything within it, like nature, it inherently nourishes. It fosters harmony, growth, longevity. It's a profound ecological idea applied to us.
It reminds me of a healthy forest. The trees aren't consciously trying to beat each other.
Right. They're interconnected. They support the whole system, the soil, the fungi networks, and the whole system supports them back. It's symbiotic, natural.
So, okay, fascinating cosmic principle. But how does this actually show up for us, for the listener? We're not heaven or earth or sages necessarily. What's the real-world takeaway?
That's the crucial question. And these principles do have powerful real-world manifestations. Let's take societal leadership. George Washington.
Ah, yeah, after the Revolutionary War.
He had immense power, immense loyalty from the army. He could easily have become king. Many expected it. History was full of examples.
But he didn't.
He consciously chose to step back, served 2 terms, then voluntarily gave up power. That act of selflessness wasn't some tactic for personal gain later.
No, it was about the country, the idea.
Exactly. It was service. And ironically, that cemented his revered status. Father of America, established the peaceful transfer of power, which was huge. His private end, the lasting republic, was achieved precisely because he put the nation's needs before his own potential power grab. He was without thought of self in that crucial moment.
That's a massive example. Really powerful. But it's not just these grand historical gestures, is it? You mentioned performance.
Yeah.
Like athletes.
Yes. Think about athletes or musicians in the flow state, that zone where time warps and they perform seemingly effortlessly.
Yeah, everyone talks about being in the zone.
And what do they consistently say? They forget themselves, the ego, the fear of judgment, the self-consciousness. Am I doing okay? What will people think? It all dissolves.
You become one with the task.
Right. A basketball player sinking an impossible shot. A musician lost in the music. By letting go of that self-preoccupation, that small self worrying about performance,
they actually perform better, more naturally, more fluidly, and maybe even feel safer because they're not tense or overthinking.
Exactly. The ego often just gets in the way of peak performance. Letting go preserves the ability to perform at your best.
And this connects to spiritual preservation too, that deeper private end.
Definitely. Thinkers like the Zen master Han Shindeking taught that true preservation isn't about desperately clinging to the physical body. We know that's temporary.
Right, it fades.
Instead, it's about spiritual preservation. Uniting with the Tao, transcending the ego, identifying with something larger, more enduring than just yourself. That's the ultimate private end the sage achieves. A deep connection, a lasting peace, an influence that outlives the physical.
Okay, so this is critical. We need to be super clear. The sage's selflessness isn't a trick. It's
Right.
not a clever strategy to secretly get ahead.
Absolutely crucial distinction. It's so easily misinterpreted. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'll act selfless to manipulate people or gain status.
That's just sophisticated selfishness, right?
Totally. It misses the entire point. Wang Bi put it perfectly. To be selfless is literally to cease acting for the self.
Cease acting for the self.
And Tzu, another great scholar, stressed that selflessness is the motive, the fundamental reason why you act, not just a means to get something else. If your underlying intention is personal gain, it's not genuine.
So the private ends achieved. They're not the goal of a deliberate strategy.
No, they're more like a natural consequence, a cosmic outcome of aligning yourself with the Tao, with those universal principles of balance and harmony.
Like planting a seed. You don't force it, you create the right conditions, and growth happens naturally.
Beautiful analogy, yes. The end unfolds naturally from the alignment, not from forceful striving for the end itself.
This leads perfectly to that idea of the two selves, which seems implicit in Laozi. Not maybe explicitly named here in Chapter 7, but definitely there.
It feels very present, yes. There's what we could call the small self.
The ego.
The ego, yeah. Defined by feeling separate, by chasing status, needing validation, driven by fear of lack, fear of losing control, fear of not being seen or valued.
That's the self Laozi says needs to be put last. The source of all the striving, the conflict, the anxiety, the part that tries to impose its will.
And then when you release the grip of that small ego-driven self, what emerges isn't nothingness, it's the great self.
The fulfilled self.
The fulfilled self. Not about personal extinction, but expansion. Finding harmony, not just with the Tao, the universe's order, but deeply with your community, with all existence.
So by letting go of the small self striving,
the sage aligns with these universal laws. Giving naturally leads to receiving. Serving genuinely leads to true leadership. Letting go allows for endurance.
And the contrast. You mentioned Enron before.
A stark, painful contrast. Executives relentlessly chasing narrow, selfish, private ends. Wealth, power, status through deception.
And the result?
Total collapse, ruin, taking countless people down with them. It's a vivid illustration of the small self running rampant, completely contrary to Laozi's wisdom.
It really drives home the real-world consequences.
Yeah.
This isn't just abstract philosophy. It impacts how organizations, societies, economies function. Which I guess brings us to that other huge concept, naturalness, Ziran.
Yes, Ziran. It's so much more than just nature, like trees and rivers. It's a core principle, a guiding light in Laozi.
It holds a really high status, you mean?
Incredibly high. It's not just descriptive, it's a universal concept, a core value. You see it everywhere in the Tao Te Ching, chapter 25. Tao models itself on naturalness. The ultimate reality operates this way.
Damn.
Chapter 51. Tao's veneration, virtue's nobility, ever natural. True virtue flows from it. Chapter 64. The sage assists the myriad things' naturalness and dares not act. Governance respects it.
Even in Chapter 23, sparing of words is natural. Brevity, authenticity.
Exactly. All these examples show Ziran is universal, tied to the Tao, the sage, everything. It's a state of being, a guiding principle.
So how do we grasp this philosophically? It's tough sometimes fitting these ancient ideas into neat Western boxes.
It is tricky. And Liu Yugon offers helpful criteria for what makes something a solid philosophical concept. Does it have universal meaning, like freedom as a right, not just, I feel free today?
Okay.
Does it have a fixed linguistic form? Ziran is one term. Does it function as a noun? Can it be the subject of a full philosophical statement? Ziran checks all these boxes.
So it's not just a vague feeling of being natural. It's a robust concept.
A profound universal value that Laozi saw as foundational to everything, cosmos, society, individuals. It's a guiding principle for how to live, how to organize.
But Liu Yugon also points out, it's hard to categorize, right? It's not just cosmology or ethics or ontology.
Exactly. It doesn't fit neatly. Which is why he suggests defining Ziran as a central value. That captures its essence, he argues, without distorting it. It fits into value theory without being forced.
It's what Laozi values most.
Yeah.
Harmony with the natural order.
Precisely. A state from which all good things flow.
But wait, here's another paradox, isn't it? If naturalness is a value, something to pursue, is the striving for it actually natural? It sounds contradictory. How do you try to be effortless?
Brilliant question. It gets right to the heart of it. And Liu Xiaogan's answer is nuanced. It depends on the nature of the striving.
How so?
Well, first, is it coming from internal drive, a genuine desire that's more natural than being coerced or doing it because you feel you should? Like a child learning to walk, the striving is natural.
Okay, internal motivation. What else?
Does it align with who you consistently are, your character? If it feels authentic, it's more natural than a sudden, uncharacteristic act.
Consistency. Got it.
Is it a normal state in a simple environment, a natural response? Or is it some isolated, weird event? And crucially, does the striving avoid force, avoid sharp conflict? Does it lead to smooth development without aggression?
So it's about how you strive. Aligning effort with the flow. The goal's naturalness doesn't automatically make any means natural. It requires wisdom.
Wise effort, exactly. Which leads us beautifully to Wu Wei, non-action.
Ugh, the big one. Often misunderstood as just doing nothing, being passive, lazy.
That's the common misconception, yeah. Passivity, idleness, irresponsibility. But that's really not it at all. Especially when you consider everything else Laozi says the sage does.
Right, it can't just be laziness.
Far from it. Think about non-contention, Buzheng. Not contending, it's an active choice not to engage in conflict, not to impose your will aggressively.
So it's a specific kind of action, or rather non-action in terms of aggression.
Exactly. And that stance leads to positive outcomes, no fault, without blame, because you haven't stirred things up unnecessarily. And look at the active virtues Laozi praises.
Like what?
Dwelling in a good place, heart like a deep pool, giving generously, speaking truthfully, governing well, being capable in affairs, acting at the right time. These are all active, engaged qualities.
They feel pretty proactive to me.
They are. It's about acting in alignment with the natural flow. Not passively submitting, but not forcefully resisting either. It's the path of wise, effective action that minimizes friction.
Effortless action, maybe? Active benevolence. Okay, that reframes Wu Wei significantly. And then there's that other phrase. For the belly, not for the eye. Sounds like a hierarchy of needs.
It really does. It strikingly anticipates modern psychology, like Maslow's hierarchy.
So for the belly is?
Basic survival. Food, water, shelter, security, the absolute essentials. Laozi emphasizes filling the belly, strengthening the bones. That's the foundation.
And for the eye?
That's everything else. Sensory pleasures, vanities, status symbols, worldly pursuits that come after basic needs are met. What we see and crave outwardly.
And Laozi's advice is?
Prioritize the belly, the essentials. Then, instead of getting trapped in those superficial eye desires, move towards higher transcendent pursuits. Knowing the heavenly way, being a model for the world.
He sees those middle desires, luxury, status, fame for its own sake, as dangerous.
Unnecessary, often distracting, and potentially sources of conflict and disaster. Think about chasing exotic wild game, linked to pandemics like SARS, or endless competition for status symbols, leading to unhappiness and unrest.
Because those desires often force us to compete, to grasp, to go against the flow.
Precisely. They're driven by the ego, by external validation, not by genuine need or natural harmony.
And you see this reflected in the lives of major historical figures.
Absolutely. Confucius, Buddha, Socrates, Gandhi, Washington, Mother Teresa, they reached the pinnacle, left huge legacies, not by chasing wealth or fame or pleasure for themselves.
They focus on essentials, addressing suffering, seeking truth, serving others, and transcending goals.
Exactly. They pursued the heavenly way, not the fleeting allure of for the eye. Their impact endures because of what they embodied, not what they owned.
Okay, this connection between ancient wisdom and modern life is getting wild. You mentioned economics, Wu Wei, and laissez-faire. That link seems almost too neat. Is it real?
It's surprisingly robust, historically speaking. It often catches people off guard. The idea that Western laissez-faire policy, often tied to Adam Smith, might have roots in Laozi's Wu Wei. It's been seriously studied.
Who made the connection?
Enter François Quesnay, 18th century French economist, leader of the physiocrats. Physiocracy itself means natural rule. They believe society should follow natural laws for well-being.
And Quesnay knew about Laozi.
Deeply impressed by Chinese thought, they called him the European Confucius. And he's widely credited with coining laissez-faire around 1758. Many historians argue it was his attempt to translate Wu Wei.
Wow. So a core concept of modern economics, minimal government intervention, might literally be a translation of Taoist non-action. That's mind-blowing.
It is pretty wild. Think about French travelers back then, like Pierre Poivre. They came back from China amazed. They saw this huge organized society thriving with relatively gentle government, lots of economic freedom due to minimal state interference.
And this inspired Quesnay.
Deeply led to his belief in a natural economic order. Let it operate freely without heavy-handed intervention, and it guides society to maximum welfare.
Wasn't there a story about him and the French prince?
The famous anecdote, the Dauphin asks, "If you were king, what would you do?" Quesnay says, "Nothing." The prince is baffled, asks, "Then who would rule?" Quesnay's answer, "The law."
That's pure Laozi, Wu Wei governance. Rule through natural order, not autocratic force.
Exactly. It echoes Laozi and also that Chinese tradition of heaven hears through the people. Legitimacy through alignment, not control. And these ideas, through Quesnay, profoundly influenced Adam Smith's invisible hand, foundational to modern political economy. Shows the incredible reach of these ancient ideas.
Truly incredible, from ancient scrolls to global economics. Speaking of scrolls, the Tao Te Ching itself is unique in how many versions we have, right? Over millennia. Yeah. Bamboo slips, silk, traditional texts.
It offers this unprecedented natural experiment, as Liu Xiaogan puts it. Like Jared Diamond studying Polynesian islands adapting differently, we can see how this single text evolved, adapted, was interpreted over 2,000 years. Almost like a living thing.
But that must make it incredibly challenging to study. All those versions, commentaries. How do you sort through it?
It's a huge challenge, like textual detective work across centuries. You're trying to piece together the original amidst layers of change.
And what kind of changes? Just typos? Or deliberate edits?
Both. There's unconscious divergence, copying errors, misread characters, dialect variations creeping in, just happens over time.
Okay, the usual stuff.
But then there's conscious divergence, sometimes arbitrary changes by scribes, but more interestingly, improvement-oriented changes by later editors.
People trying to fix Laozi.
Or standardize him. Unify chapter divisions, add titles. Yan Zun's version had 72 chapters with specific titles, trying to make it more structured, more accessible maybe.
Like organizing a messy drawer.
Pretty much. This led to textual assimilation. Different versions started looking more alike. Sentence structures got simplified. Maybe 4-character phrases became 3-character ones for rhythm or conciseness in places. Passages might get repeated across chapters for consistency.
So, potentially easier to read, but maybe losing original nuance.
That's the trade-off. Creating a neater text could sometimes obscure the original meaning, the poetry, maybe even intentional ambiguity. Clarity versus authenticity.
And then there's conceptual focusing. Sounds more deliberate.
Yes, that's editors actively strengthening key concepts like wu-wei or Tao, maybe using the terms more often, rephrasing things, reordering sentences to emphasize a particular philosophical point as they understood it.
So the text itself shows how interpretations evolved over time.
Exactly. It's a window into the history of thought surrounding the text. It wasn't static.
Which raises that fundamental question for any ancient text. How do we balance what it meant back then with what it means to us now? Gadamer's fusion of horizons.
That's the core challenge, merging our world with the text's world. And Liu Xiaogan, building on E.D. Hirsch, makes that vital distinction. Meaning versus significance.
Meaning is the original intent. Historical accuracy.
Right. What did the author, the context, likely intend? Requires careful linguistic historical work, trying not to misinterpret, getting close to what did they really mean.
And significance is its relevance today, what it implies for us.
Yes. How does it speak to our contemporary concerns? They seem distinct looking back versus looking forward.
But you can't really separate them?
In practice, no. You can't grasp the true significance if you misunderstand the original meaning. Your relevance will be built on a shaky foundation.
And sometimes we even use modern ideas to understand ancient ones. That reverse analogical interpretation.
Yeah, using Western concepts like pragmatism or positivism to frame Chinese classics. It can offer insights, make it accessible, but risks imposing structures that don't quite fit, potentially distorting the original, a real tightrope walk.
It also connects to that big Western philosophical debate. Hume's is ought problem. Can Laozi's Tao be both what is ontology and what ought to be normative?
The classic conundrum. Western thought often separates is facts from ought, values. Hume argued you can't logically derive one from the other.
But does that apply neatly to Taoism?
Liu Xiaogan, citing thinkers like Putnam and Singer, argues maybe not universally. Ancient Chinese concepts like Tao might inherently bridge that gap. The Tao is the underlying reality, and because of what it is, it ought to guide our conduct.
So reality and value aren't so sharply divided. The way things are naturally suggests the way things should be.
Exactly. A more holistic worldview where the ontological and normative are intertwined.
This holistic view seems to open doors to surprising connections.
Yeah.
Like modern science. That phrase being comes from non-being.
Yes. For a long time, Taoism was maybe sidelined as mystical anti-science, but that view is really changing.
How so?
Look at being comes from non-being next to modern cosmology, the Big Bang from a singularity, or the inflationary universe model, the idea that all matter and energy might arise from a void, a quantum vacuum.
Wow, this sounds remarkably similar.
It resonates profoundly. Laozi's idea of an ultimate, undifferentiated non-being giving rise to all being. It feels closer to modern scientific origin stories than many other traditional concepts, like a personal creator god or just eternally existing matter.
So Laozi's intuition thousands of years ago aligns with cutting-edge physics.
In a fascinating way, yes, and it extends beyond cosmology. Physicist Fritjof Capra talked about 20th century science shifts mirroring Eastern thought.
Like what?
Moving from parts to the whole system, from fixed structures to dynamic processes, acknowledging the observer affects the observed, seeing knowledge as a network, not just building blocks, accepting approximate truth over absolute certainty.
These all sound very Taoist, holistic, relational.
Exactly. It suggests Laozi had this intuitive grasp of reality's deeper nature that science is perhaps only now fully catching up with in some ways.
Amazing. Okay, shifting from the cosmos to society again. Another unexpected connection. Laozi and feminism. Those female metaphors, know the male, keep to the female overcomes the male by stillness. What's really going on there? It's not literal matriarchy, right?
Definitely not literal matriarchy or goddess worship. It's far more subtle and philosophical. As scholars explain, these metaphors promote yin or soft principles.
Humility, yielding, receptivity, patience, nurturing.
Right. Qualities often associated with the feminine, promoted within a society traditionally dominated by yang or hard principles, aggression, dominance, force. It's a kind of meta-feminism.
Operating on a symbolic level, valuing those qualities regardless of gender.
Precisely. It subtly corrects the historical disregard for these feminine characteristics. It encourages men, often in power, to respect and value these principles for good governance and well-being.
And for women,
it helps them find confidence and self-esteem based on their inherent value, the power of these yin qualities, rather than feeling they need to mimic aggressive male behaviors to succeed.
So while modern feminism has its own specific Western history,
Laozi's philosophy offers this foundational ontological feminism. It critiques male hegemony through these symbols of natural harmony, providing a deeper philosophical basis for gender balance by valuing yielding strength and receptivity.
this focus on harmony seems key. It even applies to distinguishing right and wrong, which can seem tricky. Chapter 49 talks about treating the good and not good alike. Sounds morally blurry.
Understandable reaction, but it's not immorality. It stems from that supreme principle. Tao models itself on naturalness. Natural harmony and order are prioritized above strict judgment or punishment.
Because everyone has potential. No one is truly useless.
That's the underlying belief. By not harshly labeling or condemning, the sage encourages natural correction, integration, creates space for people to realign themselves. Wang Huai talks about the sage having no selfish mind, being impartial, aiming to save or bring people back into alignment, not just punish.
It's proactive fostering of good, not passive acceptance of bad.
Exactly. And this commitment to systemic harmony even shapes his view on justice. He talks about the master of killing. Sounds harsh.
Especially from Laozi, master of killing.
But it's actually profound. He's advocating that serious punishment, justice, should be handled by specialized institutions, the master of killing, not by individuals seeking revenge.
It's rule of law, an early argument for it.
Precisely. Justice should be systematic, impartial, administered by designated authority, not driven by personal vendetta. It maintains social order through process.
So Wu Wei and Zeren aren't against legal systems. They actually support structured institutional approaches.
Yes. They emphasize the overall harmony and effectiveness of the system, ensuring order is maintained efficiently and impartially, avoiding the chaos of individual retribution or cycles of conflict. It's about systemic efficacy, not just individual morality, contrary to some later misinterpretations.
Wow. Okay, this has been incredibly rich. Chapter 7 connects to so much economics, science, feminism, justice, things you just wouldn't expect from this short, ancient text. So the big question, what does this mean for us? How do we actually apply this? Putting ourselves last feels so countercultural.
It really does, and that's where the practical application becomes so interesting, especially today. Here's something concrete to try.
Okay, I'm ready.
In your next group interaction, could be a work meeting, community gathering, family discussion, whatever. Make a conscious effort to speak last.
Speak last. Wow, okay. My instinct is often the opposite. Jump in quick.
Exactly. That's the challenge, the experiment. Instead of formulating your reply while someone else is talking or trying to get your point in first, really listen. Absorb their perspectives. Try to understand fully even the bits you disagree with.
Okay. Deep listening first. Then what?
Then when you do speak, try to synthesize. Build upon what others have said. Weave things together rather than just dropping your own separate idea.
Connect the dots instead of just stating my position.
Right. And then observe what happens. Does putting yourself last in this way actually increase your influence? Maybe in a quieter way. Does it foster better understanding, more collaboration? Do people respect your input more because you've clearly considered theirs?
Trying the paradox out in real life.
Exactly. You might find that by consciously stepping back, you actually move things forward more effectively, embodying Laozi's paradox in real time.
That's a fantastic, tangible challenge, brings it right down to earth. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's circle back to that profound question from Chapter 7.
Is it not because he is without thought of self that he is able to accomplish his private ends?
Maybe in that paradox, in selfless giving and letting go of the ego's grip, we actually find the truest path, enduring influence, real leadership, lasting fulfillment.
A powerful thought to carry with you. What might you accomplish by letting go of the need to be first?
Indeed. Join us next time as we continue our deep dive into the Tao Te Ching with Chapter 8. Laozi compares the highest good to water.
Ah, the water chapter. Beautiful.
What are water's 7 virtues? And how can they teach us to benefit everyone without contention, even in tough situations? You won't want to miss it.